Greetings everybody, welcome to another episode of Hard Talk HR. I'm your host Mihaly and Dan. My guest today is Dan Strode. Dan is a culture evangelist who strongly believes that people are the competitive advantage, but culture is the sustainable advantage. Dan is a global head of culture and strategy at Banco Santander and leads culture, leadership, performance management initiatives across 32 countries and 202,000 employees. In today's episode, we are talking about the shifting phase of the banking industry. What are the forces that shaping financial services? And of course, in today's pandemic era, what is a new reality, the next reality we're coming back to? What are some of the sustainable changes we are seeing happening? We're also talking about what are the new leadership models and leadership initiatives we need to put in practice so we serve our people at the very best. I hope you will enjoy today's episode, and if you do, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Visit our podcast pages on Spreaker and Spotify. At Hard Talk HR, we bring you fresh ideas and inspiring content from around the world of work. So Dan, it's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode at Hard Talk HR. What a privilege. And I mentioned in my introduction that you are a culture evangelist and you have a motto on your LinkedIn page that people are competitive advantage, but culture is sustainable advantage. And of course, I couldn't agree more. We all heard the saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, or culture trumps strategy every time. Having said that, you're also leading culture at one of the leading financial institutions, Banco Santander. And the banking industry has been going through major disruptions and major changes even before the COVID-19 era. So would you please just share with our viewers and share with our people who are watching our session in terms of what are some of the disruptive forces and what are some of the changes that really impacting your industry and particularly your culture?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, because the first thing to say is I love this show, fantastic show, and it's my pleasure to be here. Let me start by sending my thoughts and best wishes to everyone who's been directly affected by the COVID crisis that we're facing at the moment. The people who are directly affected, my deepest sympathies go out to you, and also the people who are unsettled by the disruption. I feel that, and everybody is in my thoughts in that respect. But it's true that ignoring and putting to side the COVID crisis, the banking industry is facing a lot of changes, and there's always one person in the room who can answer this question. And because it's just me and you, I'm going to ask you: what do banks and pandas have in common?
What do banks and pandas have in common?
Absolutely.
Well, it's a good question. I would say bank branches are disappearing the same way as probably pandas do.
Exactly. So this is a perfect answer. I knew there was always one person in the room who can answer that. Banks and pandas are at threat of extinction. And I think that goes for most companies, right? So in the 1960s, we used to see listed companies outliving humans. And of course, humans now, 50, 60 years later, are living longer lives thanks to medicine and scientific breakthroughs. But the average lifespan of a public listed company, so one of the giants, is less than 20 years. So there's been a complete reverse and a complete change in that respect. And I think that tells us a few things. It tells us that the pace of change is getting faster. Things are becoming more competitive. So what are we seeing in the banking industry? Well, I see us living the fourth industrial revolution. And within that, there's probably a few things that are happening specific to the industry. We're seeing customers spending more time online. So, using emails more, using WhatsApp more, using YouTube more. And that digital experience and online experience is also shifting customer expectation. So we're seeing customer expectations go exponentially higher because players like Amazon can now deliver you a package within an hour. So this then becomes the table stakes and the minimum that customers expect. And that then impacts your banking customers. By the way, Santander has 140 million customers. So now you have 140 million customers, people and businesses who have higher expectations to service. And I think the other two things that are affecting the industry are the technical evolution, and the fact that technology is converging. So we're seeing artificial intelligence, virtual reality, 5G, all converging together at the same time, which means we're going on this exponential growth rate. And with that has also meant that we're seeing new players and established big technology companies trying to come into the financial services sector with new business models. And what's happening there is they're disrupting the industry because they're coming in and they're taking specific parts of the value chain and doing them with really high quality and low overheads. You know, a bank has to have bricks and mortar offices. We have 12,000 branches around the world. But if you consider a technology company coming in, they say, I don't want to do that face-to-face customer relationship part. I don't want to have huge mainframes and systems and security and bricks and mortar and advertising in physical locations. What I want to do is I want to do international payments from one country to another in a really good way. So you're suddenly at threat in that respect. So I think all of those things that are happening within the Industrial Revolution, the fourth one, are really giving us some challenges and some food for thought as we move forward.
But it does require you to really be agile and really think quickly. I mean, after all, the biggest hotel chain in the world is called Airbnb. It doesn't own any properties. The biggest taxi company, Uber and Lyft, they don't have any vehicles and cars. And the same way, we all heard the stories of Nokia and Blockbuster, once very popular organizations, leading companies in their segment, practically disappeared in a very, very short span of time. So how do you, from culture perspective, how do you maintain that innovative, agile, robust culture that helps you to not to be the Blockbuster of the financial services industry?
Absolutely, because no one wants to be the Blockbuster. I think Netflix is a fantastic example because they've started their life as a DVD mail order service, and then they've pivoted into an online streaming giant. And they've shown that it's possible to continue in business and thrive in business. And actually, one of the big things that we rely on is our corporate culture within the organization, because it starts with having a very clear purpose. And when you have a purpose, you have a direction of travel that you can go in. And that's super, super critical. You need all of your people going in the same direction. You need everyone believing in what you're doing. And you need to be doing the right things as well. So the purpose of an organization is never to make money. It's always something much bigger and greater than that, something with a better, more vibrant social impact. So in our case, we want to help people and businesses prosper. What a fantastic purpose, because at the end of the day, if you can help somebody start their first business, go to university, have their first house, isn't that wonderful and fantastic? Absolutely, yes. And then you need a few other things. You need your values that you live day to day within the organization. And they manifest themselves through behaviors or leadership commitments. So the way that you do things on a daily basis. So within the bank, we have our values, which are to be simple, personal, and fair in everything that we do. And then we have a set of behaviors and a set of leadership commitments which complement and show us how to do that in the day to day. And I think if I look at the leadership commitments that we have, being open and inclusive, encouraging the team to prosper, coming up with a strategy and executing upon it, they're all things that will help us transform and pivot to where we want to go in the future and hopefully help us move the organization forwards on an ongoing basis.
And we spoke the other day about how the current pandemic, COVID-19 sort of lockdown impacted the organization. And you told me like you have 202,000 employees and more than half of them went to or became like working from home in literally in matter of days. It must have been, on one hand, an enormous task to solve it and manage it from the technical point of view. On the other hand, it still must be, or probably even harder now, to maintain the momentum from the culture, people, and connection point of view. So it's been 2 months since the lockdown. How has it impacted your culture, your way of working? How has it impacted, both the challenge and a positive outcome, your organization and the people?
Yeah, it's been interesting because probably there are phases to this. This thing that we're all living and experiencing at the moment, and the first phase that we saw was everybody with energy, nervous energy, excited energy, whatever you want to call it, depends on the person. But people were excited to be working from home. They were with energy. They were in a new environment. They were seeing how things were happening. Then we moved into a second phase, which is a little bit more uncertain. When is this going to finish? How will this look in the future? I don't know what my accountabilities and responsibilities are. And they're big challenges for every organization to face. So, you can live for a few weeks with excitement, energy, good vibrations, but then the nitty-gritty comes into play, and you have to make hard decisions and you have to support your people. And then you go to the third phase, which is the new normal, whatever that looks like. So it's true, we're 200,000 people, and we mobilized, thanks to fantastic technology teams, 115,000 people working from home. We also had 70% of our branch network open, rotating shifts and serving our customers out there in the business. We switched 50% of our contact centers to be working remotely as well, and had deployed 127,000 laptops in the business. Absolutely fantastic.
Those numbers you say is just staggering. I mean, it's insane to maintain 70% of your branch open while 150,000 people actually working from home. It must be a massive organization project, and also, of course, massive toll on people as well.
Yeah, you have to be aware of this, and we have to be respectful that people's needs are changing, and the situation is constantly evolving. And we're really focused on that and doing many things in that space around health and well-being and remote working and flexibility, and making sure everybody's catered for, because we know that there's various different groups of colleagues, people who have no immediate commitment and can continue working to whichever schedule they like, people that have a caring responsibilities, young children, old parents, relatives, friends, whatever that may be, people who are unwell and going through a health crisis. So many people with different scenarios and situations. And if I look at the branches, that's a fantastic example of what we're doing to support our people. Because we've said, if you can come to the offices and work, fantastic, because that's going to help your customers. That's going to be, really brilliant service that you're providing. You can do that on a regularized hours basis, a rota basis. If you cannot, and you still want to work, we will support you in that. And we will, we're now seeing more customer contacts online. So we needed to beef up our online capabilities, responding to emails, web inquiries, those kind of things. So changing the skills of the people, using the knowledge, the deep knowledge they have about products and services to help the customers there. And, if you only have 1 or 2 hours a week because you're caring, or have other responsibilities, come to a team meeting with a video call, or phone other colleagues for those 1 or 2 hours and check in with them, see how they are, act as a lifeline and a support. So we can all work together on this. So that's been really good.
I meant to ask you, so would you say, now a lot of people talking about, okay, well, the pandemic will be over. Eventually we'll get back to work again, to a new normal. Or I just heard yesterday, next normal, which is, I like as a phrase because it's about agility becomes a kind of a continuous way of working. So there's always a next normal. Anyway, so what I meant to ask you is that what are some of the long-term shifts, the sustainable shifts are happening and will change permanently as a result of COVID-19, how it will impact, going back to the office and just generally working?
Yeah, this is probably my favorite question because I cannot predict the future. But what I did was I had a look and I said, crisis often leads to change, right? So what are some of the long-term changes that we've seen in other crises? And if I think about the Second World War, for example, this encouraged more women into the workforce, which was a sustainable and long-term change. If I think about 9/11, that significantly changed aviation security and policy. If I think about the first SARS pandemic, that significantly boosted e-commerce. So there's many changes that can happen as a result of this. And I've come up with a short list of 6 changes that I think probably affect the way of working moving forwards. And this is specific to how we work as people out there. I think online education will absolutely become massive. People will take advantage of that. I think we need to give coaching and use the best possible digital tools to stay connected with one another and work in the best ways. I think that we need to simplify what we do and reduce bureaucracy. We need to focus on agile performance management so people know what they're doing, have clear pathways and can deliver against that. Health and well-being that I've alluded to is absolutely critical in this situation, that we need to support our people. And then the final thing, and I don't know what's the most important, but a really critical thing is leadership. Leadership becomes absolutely vital.
It has been vital, and you preempted somehow my next question, because the next question leads into what leadership do we need now? I mean, certainly when people work in physical distance, social isolation, working from home, some love it, some hate it, some are okay with that. But it does require different leadership qualities. And I know in your company, you are in charge of well-being as well. You are in charge of culture and leadership and performance management strategies. So what do you see? What sort of new leadership qualities we need in today's pandemic era that will stay with us in a long run? What are some of the emerging I hate to word softer side, so I'd like to avoid it. I don't want to use softer side, but certainly people skills that will be necessary to get result while of course caring for our people.
So two things. Now you've listed all my responsibilities, I realize I've got a lot of work on my plate moving forward.
Indeed.
And it's true, I don't like these soft skills because actually they're the hard skills. The truth is, when you do culture change, you cannot go to the executive committee on a Tuesday and say, by Thursday, everything will be resolved as a result of doing this one action, which you can do with changing the prices of mortgages. So, that's much more difficult. With regards to leadership, I think we need to put people above the economics right now. And that goes back to my thing about a purpose of an organization. The purpose isn't to drive shareholder returns as the priority. It's part of it, but you have to think more broad than that. And people are the ones that are the lifeblood of any organization. So I think probably 3 different leadership qualities are becoming really, really important and apparent. And the number one absolutely is empathy. We must be more empathetic. We must care about people. And I've got a fantastic story from a colleague in Scotland. Phones me up the other day, and he's in charge of a region of branches there in Scotland. And he says, Dan, we had a customer walk into the branch the other day with a huge bag of coins, hundreds and hundreds of coins. And I said to him, this is an interesting story. I hope you were empathetic and showed compassion and caring, because you have 2 options at this point. The first option is you say, my goodness, what is going on? Please, can you not bring us coins that we have to be in close proximity to one another for a long period of time? We have to touch, we have to count. This is a potential health risk for our people and for the branch as a whole. Or you can be empathetic and you can listen and you can understand what's going on. And the customer comes, and of course we chose, fortunately, the empathetic route. We start engaging in conversation with the customer who says, I've brought you these coins. These are my entire savings from my house. I need to be able to do online shopping because this is how I'm connected and able to have food delivered to my house because there's no shops open close to me. I'm really sorry for this. I need you to count and deposit these coins into my account because this is my lifeline. And then you say, we're really living up to our purpose here. We're helping people and businesses prosper. We've taken the empathetic route. So that's my number one leadership quality that I'm thinking about at the moment. Then my second thing I'm thinking about is linked very closely to empathy, and it's about listening and listening well. So most people think you need to be a sponge. You need to listen, you need to be quiet, you need to hear what the people say, you need to nod your head. But actually, I think you need to be like a trampoline, right? So you need to be someone who you can bounce ideas off, that can amplify the message, that asks intelligent questions. And I think when you act as a trampoline and not a sponge, as a leader, you enhance everything that's going on and you give more support to the team. And that also relates to the third thing that I'm thinking about leadership qualities, which is building, really deep psychological safety. So if you have psychological safety in your environment, you can increase participation of colleagues. You can enhance learning. You can improve motivation. You can have more creativity. And they're really, really important things for remote workers, because actually when you're remote, it's harder to participate. If you have a conference call with 15 people, how do you make sure that everybody's voice gets heard? So having psychological safety where people can speak up is really important. And I'm thinking of some tips on this. I think don't rush to give advice. Be clear in your expectations and your priorities. Make sure you're having open and honest conversations. Use HR as a really important resource. Use employee assistance programs as an important resource. As a leader, you have a lot of responsibility and pressure. Don't take it all on your shoulders. Talk to us, talk to other colleagues, and get help as well for yourself as well as your teams.
Indeed, it's so wonderful to hear some of these ideas coming to practice. As recently we had Amy Edmondson, and she delivered a talk to us on a fearless organization. I think that fearlessness liberates a lot of human energy and human creativity that eventually help us to get through, especially challenging times what we are experiencing now. And you mentioned listening, and the other day I heard a really good saying. In fact, one of our episodes, Nigel Reason was talking about asking questions from leaders. When was the last time you gave your people a really good listening? It's just such an important question. It's not just to listen for the sake of being able to respond, but really listen to understand. So really, really good insights. Thank you so much for sharing that. Last but not least, you have an analogy of a broken pyramid. Tell us about that. What is a broken pyramid?
Yeah, so it's interesting because we started by talking about this fourth industrial revolution, and I think that I mentioned the fact that technology is converging. So the AI, the VR, the 5G, everything's going exponentially faster. And again, I can't predict the future, but something I'm really conscious of from a cultural basis is, there's this meme that's going around now that says, who did the digital transformation in your company in 2020? And it says the CEO, the chief technology officer, or COVID. And the COVID is circled. And, that's quite funny, but it's true. The pace of technology change was already going faster, and now it's going to go even faster.
I just heard the other day that in terms of digital transformation, 2050 is now actually today. So kind of 30 years leapfrog in terms of adoption of digital in organizations. It's fascinating indeed.
Really fascinating. So, it's scary at the same time, right? So I always like to ask the question, and perhaps anybody watching can put their hand up virtually as they see this. Has anyone ever used an ATM?
Of course, everybody does.
Yes, yeah, probably everyone. Well, when ATMs came out, obviously everyone was super worried and scared. They say, oh my goodness, these ATMs are going to take jobs, they're going to automate, they're going to do digitally the processes, and that's true. But what actually happened was that we saw an increase in the volume of branches on the high street. This is because the cost of having a branch reduced, because you took transactional things, you moved them to digital and online platforms, and your people then became value adding, value creating, able to serve the customers. So we increased FTE numbers, we increased the branch numbers, and we improved customer service. So, it's not to say that it doesn't come with the risk, technology. I also think about the internet as well. There was a McKinsey study that actually proved that when the internet was launched, for every job that the internet destroyed, 2.6 jobs were created. So it was net positive, and there was an increase in GDP globally of 10%. So the web had done a fantastic thing. So technology doesn't have to be bad. But what it does do is it means we have to change our skills. So, a farmer that used to be a farmer with a horse, but now uses a tractor, is still a farmer, but with different skills. And, something I'm concerned about is if we think of an organization as a pyramid where you have the CEO at the top of the pyramid, and then it becomes, more large at the bottom of the organization, what happens if artificial intelligence and automation hollows out a middle layer of that pyramid? So it hollows out a middle management layer or a supervisor layer, which I think could well happen. Because if you look at AI, that can be used for checking quality within a factory. If you look at automation, it can take away repetitive jobs. So it is possible that you have this hollowing out effect. I don't know, but I can predict it. If it's the case, and even if it's not the case, technology has an impact. We could have a broken career ladder. That could mean that certain types of skills become really, really important, and we have a premium on those skills, predominantly the skills at the top of the house, at the top of the pyramid. So the emotional skills, the empathy, the leadership skills, and then deep technical or domain knowledge is also very important at that levels. So, technology comes with some good things. Probably it's going to be beneficial, but in the short term, this speeding up of technological change could be detrimental unless we take action. The good news I have, though, is that I think we do have time to take action so long as we act now. If we use technology as a partner, I think we're going to be well positioned to upskill and reskill our people. So if I think about virtual reality, for example, something that has potential to destroy jobs, but may in the long term create jobs, can help us reskill and upskill. Because if you now use virtual reality headsets, you can train your people super fast, super cheap. They learn the content and they retain the content, and it's open to all.
And will it also change potentially organizational structures? And you mentioned the broken pyramid, the traditional hierarchy top-down approach, instead of moving towards more of, as holacracy works in some organizations, some experimented, they don't really work so well, working towards the kind of independent, kind of a cells operating as one organization instead of this really top-down approach. Does it mean that the organization structure as we know it will also rapidly change due to technology, due to current pandemic situation, the disruption or the current crisis? What's your view on that?
It's interesting because there are many organizations with different structures and many of them are being successful. So it proves that not necessarily based upon your organizational structure will indicate whether you're successful or not. But I think what indicates whether you're successful or not is, do you have the ability to innovate and change your business? Or if you're a new business, pivot your business somewhere else moving forwards. And I think that's the thing that differentiates the organizations. My personal opinion and belief on this is that I like a lot this idea of co-creation, collaboration, being radically open and transparent, sharing ideas. And you can do that in many ways, but I think, what you mentioned about companies that were perhaps taking advantage of partnerships, technical or strategic partnerships, taking advantage of buying or borrowing talent from elsewhere to work on projects, speaking to customers, being open to innovation in that space, I think they're the ones that can really thrive. And also you do have to do some organizational changes if you're a very large organization that's been successful for a long time, because you have a level of bureaucracy and hierarchy that slows you down. And I think that can be a big problem for organizations. I always like to say that, there's this scientific principle called outcome bias, which says success turns luck into genius. And actually a fantastic example of this is Lego. Lego announcing record profits for many years in a row, and the CEO turns around to the guys in the boardroom and says, okay, team, congratulations. I want to say congratulations, but I also want to say, can we now reframe the market? What is our competitive battleground? Is it that we're competing against mega blocks and these toy companies, or is it that we're competing in the children's playground? If you don't buy Lego, do you buy an iPhone? Do you buy a tablet? And I think that's brilliant, because he didn't say success turns luck into genius and say, congratulations, pat on the back, let's continue doing the same thing. He said, well, let's give ourselves some constraints. And, I probably should close by saying, I put out a message on LinkedIn yesterday, it was saying, constraint leads to creativity. And now we're in the COVID situation, I think it's wonderful. And we need to think with that mindset in the organizations as well.
Absolutely. Brilliant closing note. Constraint creates creativity. There's no better way to finish such a Hard Talk HR session. Dan, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, to tap on your brain, to discuss, to connect, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, just search for me in LinkedIn. Generally, I can reply to most of the queries that I receive, and I'm delighted to do so, because one of the fantastic things of this community is that it is a community, and I love working in this space because everybody helps each other. So there's so much we can learn from one another, and I would love to be in contact.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dan. Much appreciated. And those of you who enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We'll be back with more Hard Talk HR very soon.